Moonlight spilled like silver across the twisted forest of Varanth. The trees whispered secrets in the wind, and shadows stretched long, hiding creatures that no one dared name. Lyria moved cautiously, her silver-veined eyes reflecting the faint glow. Every step she took was measured, careful not to snap a twig or alert any danger lurking in the darkness. But in her heart, a heavier weight pressed down than the fear of being caught. It was the fear of what her destiny demanded of her. Since birth, she had carried a curse in her blood. The elders called it forbidden moonfire, a magic both beautiful and deadly. It sparked in her veins during moments of strong emotion, often uncontrolled. People feared her because of it. Some whispered she would destroy kingdoms, while others claimed she would bring ruin to her own family. But Lyria wanted none of that. She wanted only peace. A life where she could walk without suspicion, laugh without fear, and breathe without feeling the world's judgment pressing down on her shoulders. Tonight, peace felt impossible. Somewhere ahead, the crunch of leaves told her that she was being followed. Lyria's heart tightened, and instinctively, the moonfire in her veins flickered like a faint ember. She turned sharply, expecting an animal, or perhaps a thief, but instead, she saw him. Ravel. He stepped from the shadows like a predator who had been waiting for his prey. His dark eyes were sharp, filled with both anger and certainty. His clan had long believed that Lyria was meant to be his mate not out of love, but because fate had bound them. But he did not want her for herself. He wanted her as a weapon, a shield, a tool to control power he did not fully understand. "I'll end you tonight," Ravel said, his voice low, cold, and terrifyingly certain. Lyria's breath hitched. She had expected threats before, but hearing them now, spoken as if her life was already forfeit, made her blood run icy. She clenched her fists, fighting the surge of moonfire that rose in response to her fear. She did not run from death, no, that she had faced before, but she ran from the certainty that fate had chosen a mate who wished her harm. I am not yours," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. "Fate cannot bind me to a life I do not choose." Ravel's lips curved into a faint, cruel smile. "You have no choice. You belong to the bond, whether you like it or not. And I will not let anything stop me from taking what is mine." Lyria's heart ached not just from fear, but from something heavier. The despair of being hunted by someone who should have been her protector, someone fate had marked to love her. And yet, here he stood, ready to destroy her. Before she could respond, a sound rolled through the forest like a thunderclap, a deep, low growl resonating through the trunks of the trees, making Ravel hesitate. Lyria froze, her heart racing. The sound grew closer, stronger, almost as if the forest itself had come alive to protect her. From the shadows, a figure emerged. Taller, broader, and more commanding than any man Lyria had ever seen. His presence was overwhelming, his eyes glowing like two eclipsed moons. He exuded power, authority, and a strange gentleness all at once. Arn, the Alpha King, had arrived. He was not meant to interfere. The laws of the kingdom forbade an Alpha King from meddling in the bonds of other clans. Yet here he stood, as if some ancient part of him refused to watch a life he deemed precious crumble before his eyes. Ravel's anger faltered, replaced by surprise and caution. "You," he began, but Arn's gaze pinned him, silencing the threat before the words could finish. "Step back," Arn said, his voice low, resonating like distant thunder. "You will not harm her," Arn said. "You will not harm her." Ravel bristled. "This does not concern you, King. She is mine by fate. I will not let—" "No," Arn interrupted sharply. "She belongs to no one who would harm her." Lyria watched in awe and disbelief. The man who had once been a distant figure in legends and stories had now become her shield, standing between her and the one she was meant to fear. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a spark that had nothing to do with the moonfire in her blood. Ravel's hand twitched, his fingers brushing the hilt of a hidden dagger. But before he could move, Arn stepped forward, each movement calm and deliberate, radiating authority. Even the forest seemed to pause, holding its breath. "You would threaten her life," Arn said, voice steady. "And you call yourself a warrior? A mate? A protector?" Ravel's face twisted with fury. "You do not understand. She is mine. She is not yours." Arn roared, his voice echoing through the trees like a storm. "No bond can claim someone who does not wish to be claimed. And I will not allow harm to come to her while I draw breath." For a moment, silence fell. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Ravel's anger burned hot, but he knew he could not match the Alpha King in power. With a growl, he backed away, but his eyes never left Lyria, filled with dark promise and obsession. Lyria felt her knees weaken. She was trembling, not from fear alone, but from the sudden weight of everything that had shifted in that instant. Her life, her destiny, her very fate had changed in a single heartbeat. Arn turned to her, his expression softer now, almost gentle. "You are safe for now," he said quietly. "But the danger is not gone. Not entirely. There are forces at work that you cannot yet see." Lyria looked up at him, her silver-veined eyes wide with questions. Who are you? Why protect me?" Arn's eyes softened, but the shadow of the king's burden remained. "And I know it is slowly killing you. I will not stand aside while that happens." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. How could she explain the fear, the loneliness, the pain of living under a curse that none could understand? How could she express the confusion of suddenly finding someone willing to risk everything for her, a person whose life should have been untouchable by her plight? Arn knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to her level. "You are stronger than you know," he said, voice gentle yet firm. "And soon, you will need to understand that strength, not for your enemies, but for yourself." The sound of footsteps in the forest reminded Lyria that danger had not disappeared. Ravel and his clan were not far, and though Arn had arrived, there was still the threat that would not relent, a fate that might demand a price she was not yet ready to pay. Lyria drew a shaky breath and whispered, "I don't know if I can." "You can," Arn said, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "And I will not let you face it alone. Not while I stand." For a moment, time seemed to stop. The world held its breath. The forest, the moon, the shadows, they all waited. Lyria felt a spark of something she had never known. Hope. Then, as if the universe itself had decided to remind them of the storm to come, a scream echoed from the deeper woods, a signal, sharp and urgent. The sound of Ravel's voice, commanding, furious, dangerous. Arn's hand tightened on her shoulder. "We must move," he said. "There is no time to linger. The night is not yet done, and he will not stop." Lyria nodded, fear twisting into determination. She did not yet understand the depth of her powers, the full measure of the curse in her veins, or the future that awaited her. But one thing was clear: she would not be taken. Not tonight, not by him, not by fate. As they moved into the shadows together, the moon caught Arn's eyes, making them shimmer like eclipsed suns. And for the first time, Lyria felt a strange certainty. Somehow, she was no longer alone in the darkness. But the forest still whispered. The curse still stirred. And Ravel, burning with obsession and rage, was already planning his next move. The forest around them seemed alive with shadows as Arn guided Lyria along the hidden paths known only to the Alpha King. Moonlight cut through the trees in thin silver blades, casting patterns that danced on the forest floor. Each step forward carried them farther from Ravel. Yet the fear and tension were never far behind. Lyria's heart beat like a drum in her chest, not entirely from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of everything she had yet to understand. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, keeping her gaze low. The words felt awkward on her tongue, fragile and unsure. "You are a king. You should not interfere with other clans. My life, it should not concern you." Arn's face remained unreadable, shadowed by the dim light, but his eyes shone like twin moons reflecting in still water. "You are not just any life," he said. "You are a force I cannot ignore. The curse in your blood, it has called me, though I do not yet understand why." Lyria swallowed. She had never heard a king speak like that. Not of care, not of attention, not of concern for someone like her. Yet, beneath his calm tone, there was an undeniable weight, a quiet strength that made her feel both fragile and safe at the same time. They moved in silence for a while. The only sound the soft crunch of leaves under their boots. Lyria tried to steady her breathing, to remind herself that nothing about this situation was ordinary. Not the forest, not the chase, not the man walking beside her, whose presence seemed to bend the air around him. "You should rest," Arn said after a long pause. His voice was firm but gentle, like the first break of dawn after a long night. "You cannot face what is coming without strength." Lyria shook her head. "I cannot rest. Ravel. He will not stop. Even if I hide, he will find me. And I—" She faltered, unsure how to finish the sentence. She had no power to control the curse in her blood, no control over the bond that fate demanded, and she feared what she might do if she lost that battle. Arn stopped and turned to her. His eyes studied her as if he could see straight into her soul. "Strength is not about fighting alone," he said. "It is about knowing when to accept help." She looked up at him, startled by the depth in his voice. She had lived her life, believing she had to bear everything alone. That had been the only way to survive. And yet, in this moment, the idea of letting someone else bear the burden, even a king, felt strangely comforting. The path opened into a small clearing, and Arn led her to a hidden glade, filled with soft moss and a small spring. Moonlight kissed the water, making it shimmer like liquid silver. Here, Lyria could rest, if only for a little while. As she settled near the spring, she could not stop the questions that churned in her mind. Why did the curse exist? Why had it called Arn to her side? And most of all, why did he care? Arn crouched beside her, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "The curse in your blood was not random," he said quietly, almost as if speaking the words aloud made them more real. "It was placed there for a reason. Someone, or something, wanted to test the hearts of those it would touch. And you were chosen." Lyria's eyes widened. "Chosen? Chosen for what?" Arn did not answer immediately. Instead, he gazed into the shimmering water of the spring. The light reflected in his eyes, and for a moment, he looked almost human, almost vulnerable. "To awaken what has long been dormant," he said finally. "To see if the heart of a king, of anyone, is capable of love, sacrifice, and mercy." The words struck her like a cold wind. She had never imagined that her life, her suffering, her fear, her curse, could carry such weight. She felt smaller, fragile in the face of destiny, and yet, also stronger. Somehow, knowing that she had been chosen for a purpose gave her a spark of hope. But hope was fleeting. A distant sound of movement, almost like the whisper of wings, reminded her that danger was never far. Ravel's pursuit would not stop, and the clans that followed him were relentless. Arn stood and offered his hand. "You must come with me," he said. "The castle is safe. For now, It is the only place where you can truly learn to control what is inside you. Lyria hesitated. Fear gripped her again, but something in his gaze made her take his hand. As he led her through the trees, the moonfire in her veins flickered softly, not out of fear, but curiosity. She did not understand it yet, but she sensed that this power could be guided. If only she could learn. The journey was long and quiet. Neither spoke much, yet the silence between them carried more meaning than words ever could. Each step brought Lyria closer to a world she had never known. A world of kings, power, and secrets older than she could imagine. When they reached the outskirts of Arin's fortress, the first rays of dawn brushed the high walls with pale light. The castle loomed like a giant sentinel, its towers piercing the sky. Guards watched silently, eyes alert. But they stepped aside when Arin approached. None dared question him, not the king of Varanth, not the Alpha who commanded obedience through strength alone. Inside the fortress, Lyria found herself in a place both magnificent and cold. High ceilings, walls lined with ancient tapestries, and the subtle hum of magic in the air made her feel as though she had stepped into another world. Arn led her to a private chamber, small and simple compared to the grandeur around it, but safe. "You will rest here," Arn said. Lyria nodded, her chest tight. She did not know whether to be grateful or frightened. Why do you care?" she asked again, her voice barely more than a whisper. Arn paused. His back was straight, his shoulders broad, but there was a quiet vulnerability in his posture that she had not seen before. "Because I cannot stand by and watch you suffer," he said. "Because something in you calls to me in ways I cannot yet explain, and because I will not fail you." The words made her heart ache. She had never been seen like this, never felt such understanding, such care. And yet, she knew that danger was still close, that the bond she shared with Ravel would not be ignored, that fate had not abandoned its claim. As Lyria settled onto the soft bed, she felt the moonfire stir again, reacting to the intensity of her emotions. She tried to calm it, to hold it back, but the power flared, warm and bright beneath her skin. Arn noticed immediately. "You are not ready to fight it yet," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "But you will be. And when that time comes, you will do more than survive. You will thrive." Lyria looked at him, unsure if she could believe him. Thriving felt impossible when her life had been marked by fear, by running, by threats from a mate who should have loved her. And yet, the calm strength in Arin's gaze made her believe, just for a moment, that it could be possible. Outside the chamber, the castle was waking. Guards patrolled, servants moved quietly, and the first light of morning painted the halls in gold. But, beyond the walls, danger still lurked. Ravel's obsession had grown, fueled by the promise of a fated mate who refused him. And though Arin had brought Lyria to safety, he knew this was only a brief reprieve. That evening, Arin guided Lyria to the high balcony overlooking the forests. The sunset painted the sky in shades of red and gold, a fiery warning of the chaos to come. He spoke quietly, almost to himself, as much as to her. "The curse will awaken fully soon," he said. "And with it, Ravel will come. You must be ready to face him, not with fear, but with choice. The power in your blood is not meant to destroy, but to decide. To decide what kind of life you will lead, and what kind of heart you will trust." Lyria felt the weight of his words press upon her. Choice. For the first time in her life, she realized that she was not entirely at the mercy of fate. She could act, she could decide, she could fight. Yet the question remained. Could she trust the heart that had appeared so unexpectedly? A heart that belonged to a king, a man of power and command, a man she barely knew but somehow could not ignore. As night fell, the first stars appearing in the sky, a scream ripped through the air. A distant, angry roar carried across the forests Ravel had found them. Aron's hand tightened on hers. "It begins," he said. "Are you ready?" Lyria nodded, determination sparking in her silver-veined eyes. She did not yet fully understand her power, nor the bond that had been forced upon her. But she understood one truth. She would no longer run. She would fight. And she would not face the darkness alone. The castle gates trembled as the first of Ravel's forces appeared, shadows moving like a wave against the walls. Lyria's chest tightened, and the moonfire surged again, responding to her fear, her anger, and her resolve. The fortress trembled under the weight of approaching shadows. The night air was thick with tension, carrying the sharp scent of magic and iron. Lyria stood at Aron's side, heart pounding like a drum. The moonfire in her veins blazed brighter than ever, responding to her fear, anger, and determination. She had trained herself to control it for moments like this, and now the time had come to face the threat she had run from her entire life. From the forest, a roar split the air. Ravel stepped into the clearing before the fortress gates, his eyes burning with stolen magic. His aura was dark, twisted by obsession and rage. Behind him, the forces of his clan surged like a tide of shadow, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. Arn's hand rested lightly on Lyria's shoulder, grounding her. "Remember," he said softly, his voice firm yet calm, "you are not just surviving. You are choosing. Your power is yours, not his. Use it wisely." Lyria nodded, taking a deep breath. She could feel the pulse of moonfire through her veins, raw and untamed. This was not merely about survival. It was about proving that she could decide her own fate. And she would not let Ravel take that from her. The gates shuddered as Ravel's forces pressed against them. His voice rang out, full of fury and entitlement. "She belongs to me. I will not fail in claiming what fate promised." Arn stepped forward, his own power radiating like a living shield around them. The ground seemed to hum beneath his feet as he raised his hands. A protective barrier of light and shadow formed around the fortress, pushing back Ravel's forces, but not stopping them completely. Lyria closed her eyes for a moment. She felt the fire within her respond, reaching for her hand as if urging her to act. The moonfire was hers alone, and now it demanded control, not suppression. She opened her eyes, silver light shining in them, and stepped forward. A burst of moonfire erupted from her hands, a wave of pure energy that lit the night sky. It swept across the battlefield, not to destroy, but to protect. Soldiers and creatures alike were thrown off balance, but no one was killed. Lyria's heart raced with exhilaration and fear. She realized, in that moment, that her curse was not a chain, it was a choice. Ravel's eyes widened in shock and rage. "What? What are you?" he spat. "You cannot control that power. It is mine to claim." "You are wrong," Lyria said, her voice steady and commanding. "It is mine." Ravel advanced, dark magic swirling around his hands, but the surge of moonfire from Lyria was too strong. She pushed forward, not out of vengeance, but to stop him from harming anyone else. The energy wrapped around him like a living net, forcing him to retreat. Arn joined her, placing a hand on her arm. "Do not let the bond of fate control you," he said. "You are stronger than destiny itself." Together, they pushed back Ravel and his clan. The forces of the forest and fortress responded to Lyria's power, creating a harmony of magic and strength that no single warrior could oppose. Every moment tested her resolve, every breath demanded courage. But Lyria felt the truth in Aron's words. She was not a pawn in fate's game. She was a force unto herself. Ravel, seeing his power fail, made one final, desperate move. He surged forward, eyes blazing, intent on forcing Lyria to submit. But this time, she did not fear him. She raised her hands, not in anger, but with clarity. Her moonfire wrapped around him, not to destroy, but to purify, to break the darkness that had consumed him. The energy coursed through Ravel, and his eyes widened in shock. The dark obsession and rage that had defined him began to fade, replaced by clarity and exhaustion. He collapsed to the ground. No longer a threat, though still alive. Lyria's power dimmed as quickly as it had risen, leaving her trembling, but victorious. Arn stepped closer, supporting her. "You did it," he said, his voice full of awe. "You controlled it. You made it yours." Lyria looked at him, breathless. For the first time, she felt the weight of the curse lift. Not because it was broken, but because she had learned to wield it as her own strength. She had chosen her path, and in doing so, she had claimed her destiny. The night settled into silence, the aftermath of the battle leaving the forest and fortress in a fragile peace. Lyria and Arryn stood together, looking out over the fields where Ravel and his clan had retreated, humbled and broken. The danger was gone, for now, and a new understanding had emerged. "You could have lost yourself," Arn said quietly. "But you did not. You could have given in to fear, to destiny, to the bond that was forced upon you. And yet, you chose differently. That is true strength." Lyria's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I was afraid," she admitted softly. "But I did not want to lose myself. Not to fate. Not to anyone." Arn nodded, his gaze softening. "And yet, you were not alone. You never were." The words lingered between them, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had formed, not the bond of forced destiny, but of trust, respect, and something deeper that neither could yet name. In the days that followed, the castle became a place of learning and growth. Lyria trained with Arryn, mastering her moonfire and discovering the limits of her strength. The bond with Ravel faded into memory, a reminder of what could have been, but it no longer held power over her heart or choices. Arn remained by her side, not as a king enforcing rule, but as a partner in the quiet journey of understanding. Their interactions were often quiet, filled with small moments of shared insight, laughter, and the kind of gentle understanding that could only come from truly seeing another person. One evening, under the same moon that had witnessed the first threats, Arn led Lyria to the balcony overlooking the kingdom. The sky was clear, stars shimmering like scattered jewels. The wind carried a sense of calm, a promise that the storm had passed. "You have changed," Arn said, voice soft yet commanding. "Not just in power, but in heart. You have learned to face what was meant to control you, and made it yours. That is more than most could ever achieve." Lyria looked at him, her silver-veined eyes reflecting the starlight. "And you? What have you learned?" she asked gently. Arn's gaze met hers, unwavering and deep. "I have learned that strength is not just about ruling kingdoms or commanding armies," he said. "It is about standing for someone, even when the world says you should not. And I have learned that a heart can awaken, even after centuries of rule, when it finds someone worth protecting." The words struck Lyria deeply, filling her with warmth and a sense of belonging she had never known. For the first time, she felt the possibility of a future where fear did not define her, where the curse in her blood was not a chain but a power she could wield freely. But the night had one more gift to offer. As they stood together, the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, casting gold and rose across the kingdom. The light caught Lyria's eyes, and she realized that her journey was only beginning, not as a pawn of fate, not as a cursed girl, but as a woman who had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Arn stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, We face it together. Not as king and subject, not as master and mate, but as equals, as two hearts who choose to stand side by side. Lyria felt her chest tighten, emotions she had long kept buried rising to the surface. I want that. And as the sun rose, spilling light across the kingdom, they stood together, ready to face whatever destiny would bring, not bound by fate, but bound by choice, trust, and the bond they had forged through fire, struggle, and courage. For the first time in her life, Lyria felt free. And Aaron, the Alpha King, who had watched over her, knew that she had awakened something in him that no crown, no kingdom, and no battle ever could. The night of terror, threats, and curses was over. What remained was the promise of a future built on strength, trust, and the quiet, unspoken magic of two hearts choosing one another.